You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is Pilates and the benefits of moving to keep things moving. When exercise is done the right way, you can leverage the benefits and get a big result from surprisingly little effort. Point is, we need to move our body, our muscles and our circulation to maintain good mobility and flexibility. The less exercise and the more sedentary we become, the stiffer, weaker, and more prone to injury we become. Even if you are recovering from an injury or are in your senior years with aches and pains that don't leave you alone, Pilates exercises can help to maintain fitness in a gentle, enjoyable, and sustainable manner. My special guest today is Kate Boyle, a nutritionist and Pilates instructor that focuses on effective lifestyle practices and strategic body movement to eliminate pain and build strength. So welcome, Kate. Lovely to have you on board today.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here. I always love chatting about Pilates, so it's going to be a great conversation.
Nice. Tell us first of all about your own personal journey and what benefits that you found Pilates to have compared with other exercise strategies.
Sure. So originally, I thought I was going to become a dancer. And at the ripe old age of 16, I tore the meniscus in my knee. And, for any dancer, they tell you you can go on and become a dancer, but you're always going to be put up the back because you've already got an injury from such a young age. You're going to be a liability. So I had to flip my career trajectory and I ended up going off to university to study nutrition in the hope that I could help other young dancers with their nutrition. And at the time, I was teaching dancing part time, and one of my girlfriends had done the Pilates course and said, you should go off and do the Pilates course, lots of work in the field. You've been teaching, you've got a dancer's background, it'll be simple. So I thought, oh, well, yeah, I've done some Pilates. This would be interesting. Why not? Went off and did the Pilates course, alongside my university degree, taking everything on at once, and started teaching people and seeing the differences that it made. So people would come in with lower back pain, and within a few lessons, they were like, oh, my lower back pain's so much better. And I started applying it to my own body. I'd had a torn hamstring, torn ligaments in my ankle. I had SIJ problems. And the more I did Pilates and the more I taught Pilates, the more I rehabbed myself and then my clients as well. And I thought this modality, it's amazing. It's full body. We connect to our breath. We switch on our core. So I did my course in 2004, and that was sort of starting to become the buzzword. Switch on your core. So it gained in popularity. And then as I got into Pilates more and more, I've diversified and, we apply it to pregnancy and postpartum. So during my pregnancies and postpartum, I could help my own body to still move during pregnancy, feel really strong, have a great labor, recover really well. And then also when I've had injuries throughout the years, I go straight to Pilates to rehab them every single time. I've done neuro courses. So I work with people that have had strokes and things. There's so many different applications. And so I think one of the rewarding things is I've been able to help so many different people, whether or not it's a knee replacement or back pain or a stroke or Alzheimer's. And then for myself, it's been that constant modality I've always turned to no matter what stage of life I've been in.
Yes, I think people underestimate a lot the important role of muscles in overall health. And as you mentioned before, what triggered your journey into this area was your own injury. And what happens with injury is something gets sore somewhere and we compensate and we put extra strain on other muscles somewhere else. And then that causes a problem in the somewhere else. And then you have this cascade of other ailments coming from this compensation effect, trying to counteract what happened with the injury. So so tell me if this is right. So how I look at Pilates is retraining the muscles to go back into the right position to alleviate that cascade and bring it back to normal. And you do it in a very gentle way. So my other question is, how do you work out what people need on an individual basis? Because you can tailor make this to so many different people with, different issues, different age groups. How do you work out what people need and how to design something that's just for them?
So usually when people come in, they've usually been referred to me by their chiro or their osteo or their doctor. So most people are coming with something in mind, whether or not it's hip pain or, if they've had pain and they've had an MRI done and they've got a tear in their rotator cuff in their shoulder. So usually people are coming to me for some reason. And so that's a great place to start. But we also do a bit like a chiro or a myotherapist. We do a postural assessment. So, I look at their range of movement. I look how they sit to stand. I look at their gait and how they're walking. We'll evaluate where, there might be certain muscles on either side of the body that have atrophied. Maybe they have a scoliosis. So we do a one-on-one class. It's pretty in depth looking at posturally, where things are and how you move. And then we start to go through some of the fundamental Pilates movements. And, starting with the bridge where we're looking at spinal mobility, we can tell from that, just that one exercise, how well the glutes are switching on, the hamstrings, how great that spinal mobility is, whether or not it's stiff, so there's certain exercises that we'll go through that we get a great gauge from. And then also I'll see from that how the clients are coping. Is this exercise feeling really hard? Is it feeling really easy? When we're using equipment, we can either up the load or put the load down, depending on how strong or how much support they need. So it's really paying attention to your client. And even sometimes, as soon as they are walking into the studio, I'm looking at how they move. Because often clients will come in and I'll be like, what have you done to your leg? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, how do you know? I said, because you're limping as you're walking in the
And they're
studio.
used to it. They got used to it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even realize that they're doing that. And so one of the great things about Pilates is it's building up that body's proprioception, so our body awareness. So even if you're coming in with lower back pain and you tend to compensate and sort of lean across the other side, we start to teach people how we can connect to our body, how we can actually feel when we're doing that, and how we need to shift and make sure that we're even between both sides of our sit bones, etc. So that proprioception development is one of the big things about Pilates that just helps you with injury, but also everyday life.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you're introducing the element of mind and conscious awareness in that part of the body. So I've also been a dancer in my much younger years and did yoga as well. And I know that both those practices require you to focus on posture and muscles and what the body is doing when and where, and timing and precision and balance. Balance is everything. But a lot of people don't have that training, and they need to be retrained, don't they, to really to really feel their body, to notice when things are going on, to notice when things are not right, and to know when things are right, when they're in the right position and they're doing it the right way. So this is a process, isn't it? It's a process of education in that system. It's not like, well, you just join a yoga class and you do what everyone else is doing. It's a bit different.
Well, yeah, it takes time. I had a client start last week and she came in with quite bad lower back pain. And I was looking at her, just standing up and sitting down and looking through that movement. And she had her toes lifted up in the air. And I said, we need to press down through those toes. Otherwise, we're not transferring our weight properly through our feet, which is going to compress through the lower back. And she said, oh, I do that all the time. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, the tiles are cold at home. So when I'm walking around at home, I walk around with my toes lifted. And I said, well, that changes that weight placement through the body to the heels, to the glutes, to the back of that spine. So I said, we need to start to walk with those toes down. And she said, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It becomes such a habit that it just becomes part of everyday life. So even just somebody pointing out some of these small things can then change your movement patterns. And over time, it's those movement of walking and sitting and standing that will add up to pain if they're not in that sort of best pattern available.
Yes. So coming back to this pain issue, what is the mechanism of action when you retrain muscles and the pain goes away? What's actually happening in the body? In other words, why do we get the pain in the first place?
Well, there can be a combination of factors. So, pain is usually multifactorial, and most people think, if they've got lower back pain, that it is purely just physical and there may be a muscle that's tight. What we do know from pain is that there can be an emotional component, there can be a physical component, there can be a mental component. So, if you're really stressed with work, if you are caring for a loved one, if you're moving house, all of these types of stresses can actually manifest in the body. So, even though it may be turning up, in that lower back, once we address those other stresses in our lives, we tend to find that the pain does reduce. On top of that, when you're coming into the studio, what I'm trying to work on is that correct muscle patterning. So we're looking at what muscles are overactive and what muscles are underactive, and we're trying to reduce those overactive muscles and then start to build the strength and switch on those underactive muscles. So there's lots of combinations in the body that tend to sort of, work in combo with, say, your lat being overactive and your glute being underactive. So there's some simple ones to fix, and then there can be some more complex ones as well.
Yeah, so it gives you an advantage being a nutritionist as well, because you mentioned stress. And when people are, for instance, magnesium deficient, so what we found in our business, Elektra Magnesium, when people are very highly stressed, they lose excessive amounts of magnesium, and the lower the magnesium gets, the less able to cope with stress we are. So we become more sensitive to stress. Everything feels heightened, and you can move into inflammation as well as a result of the stress and not having a magnesium sufficient enough to rebalance and replenish supplies. So in your experience, how do you also educate people or help them to work out where they may be lacking nutritionally to then make it a more holistic approach with the Pilates?
So my nutrition consults, I usually do, again, a one-on-one. We do a full diet history. We'll look at blood tests, we'll look at minerals, check out where any deficiencies are. And you mentioned magnesium. That's one of the ones that so many people, it's one of the highest things that we tend to see people tend to be deficient in. So vitamin D, magnesium, iron can be quite high too, deficiency in amongst women with anemia and that. So there's some big ones that we need to look at. And when it comes to muscle contraction, magnesium is obviously essential. So if I have a client in the Pilates studio that may be cramping quite a bit or complaining of just general overall muscle soreness or even lack of energy, I'll often talk to them about magnesium, whether or not they're taking it, in a powder or a supplement form, or um, recommend magnesium oil. So I think that's fantastic for muscles, especially if you've got any muscle aches. I often tend to advise clients to start there first, and then from there, heat pack if they need it. It depends if it's ongoing pain or if it's just DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness post following a workout. So usually we're just trying to work out what type of pain it is and then the next course of action from there.
Yes, and we found magnesium soaks work quite well as to help relax and relieve that muscle tension, and also increase the blood circulation because you want the nutrients to get to the ends, to the extremities, and it's good to do before and after working out because I think the muscles recover much faster as well and retain more elasticity. So what you're doing with the Pilates is stretching and contracting. So when you contract, you're using the calcium in the body to squeeze, but to relax, you need the magnesium to help it extend as far as it can go gently. And so it's all safe as well. So with the Pilates, coming back to perhaps elderly, when their bones or their ligaments and joints are a little bit more fragile, do you have a different technique for that age group?
We generally focus a lot more on balance, as we said before. So we will look more at general movement patterns. So, especially as I said before, that sit to stand is a really big one as we age. A lot of people tend to have to use their arms to get up out of a chair or brace themselves as they're sitting down. So, we really do look at the general everyday things. Can you bend down to pick something up off the floor? Can you get up and out of the chair? Can you lean over to do some gardening? So, those sort of just basic movement patterns become even more important. And then we focus a lot on balance. And then also, we add in weights. So, we want to be working on bone mass as well as muscle mass, especially for our older population. We know falls are the biggest reason for
Yes.
hospitalization. So, we really need to work on that. And that's part of what we do in Pilates, working on double leg, single leg stance, adding in, hand weights. I've got kettlebells in the studio too. So, really trying to load up that skeletal system to try to build and obviously maintain as much strength as possible.
And also the core strength you mentioned a lot earlier. How would you build the core strength? For instance, with someone who's, had a sedentary life or perhaps been recovering from an injury and hasn't exercised for a long time, and that core, that middle part of the body is quite weak or lax. How do you start to build that up?
Well, I think it's one of those things. Everybody thinks if they have to work their core that they need to be doing abdominal crunches, to switch on that core.
Yeah, that's what I
But you're
thought.
working your yeah, no, if you are standing, and lifting weights, you're still working your core. You're still
Mhm.
having to work on that stability. So we can increase the difficulty of that and work on single sided things or single legs. So we'll often do a lot of standing work. We'll do 4-point kneeling, so onto the hands and knees with
Mhm.
single opposite arm and leg reaches as well. That's another great one to do. And just really trying to challenge their whole body stability. So whether or not we're using the reformer or the Cadillac with bigger pieces of equipment, pulling down spring loads through the upper body, lifting the opposite leg to get that coordination going. So pretty much any sort of form of exercise that you're doing, you are going to be working your core, especially if it includes any type of balance work. So do remember that. And we don't tend to do a whole lot of abdominal crunches because rectus abdominis is the main muscle on the front of those abdominals we see, but it's the most superficial abdominal muscle. So we really want to work the deeper abdominal muscles, those obliques and the transversus abdominis, which is located closer to the spine. And we can do that with more of our sort of lower grade stability work.
Yeah, bending and picking things up and using those legs, because the legs get a bit shaky, don't they?
Yeah, squats,
Mm.
lunges,
Mhm.
everybody thinks they have to come into a Pilates studio to do Pilates, but there's so much you can do at home,
Yeah.
even if you're just starting with some basic squats and lunges.
Yes, maybe you should do a TV program. They can turn on the TV and follow your instructions.
Yeah, like the 1990s
Yeah.
morning shows.
Well, that's showing my age because the TV was full of that sort of stuff, exercising, all sorts of different, dance moves, jazzercise. Yeah. Actually, I miss them because it's quite convenient. I think we need to revive that revolution where you can switch on
Yeah.
a video with your favorite teacher and just follow the bouncing ball, follow the prompts. So, and before we finish, can you just add anything that we may have missed out or summarize what people need to be aware of if they are looking for something like Pilates to help them strengthen up or recover from the pain? What should they be mindful of?
I think really if you're going to look for a studio, just make sure that your instructor is qualified. Pilates in the last few years has had a massive explosion. There's lots of reformer studios out there, but they are very much just like a gym class. Everybody doing the same thing, 10, 15 people in the class, and the instructor just yelling out, do 10 reps of this and 20 reps of that. So it is very general. So if you are looking, if you've got something, pain or an injury or a condition, and you really want to work on it, like scoliosis, for example, seek out a qualified instructor. So in Australia, we've got the Pilates Method Alliance, which is the PMA. You can look up their website, find a list of instructors on there, or do a Google search for a local studio in your area and just make sure you have a good read and make sure that they've done, a full length, diploma qualification in Pilates. So I think that's a really great place to start.
Yes, and also we should mention that if you're pregnant, you'll need to do Pilates in a different way, obviously, because you've got this big counterbalance and you want to make sure that you do it the right way.
Yeah, and there's quite a number of movements when you are pregnant that are contraindicative. So we definitely don't want to be doing any type of sit-ups, when we're pregnant, because we need to allow space for the growing baby, in our abdomen there. Also, pregnant women, when they're lying down, they can tend to get quite dizzy. So we need to make sure that they're a bit more propped up. So there are certain things during pregnancy that you do need to be aware of. So definitely seek out a qualified instructor. And if you can, start Pilates before you get pregnant. A lot of people think that Pilates is just great when you're pregnant, but once you're pregnant, it's very hard to build on more strength because the ligaments in your body are loosening. So we're really just trying to maintain the strength you have. So if you can really build up that strength prior to getting pregnant, then your pregnancy is going to be so much easier.
So how does that work? How does a pregnancy get easier with the Pilates exercises? What is it doing to help that process?
So, because the ligaments in our body tend to get more lax, a lot of women that may not have been doing a lot of strength training prior to pregnancy will get a lot of SIJ pain, a lot of lower back pain.
Mhm.
When in Pilates, we start to focus on working that transverse abdominis, so that deepest abdominal layer that really holds the baby up close to the abdomen, okay, towards the spine. So, when you're having to bend and twist and do all those types of
Yep.
things, your core is a lot stronger and you're a lot more protected. So with our pregnant women, we also focus a lot on lower leg strength, to support that extra weight that you're growing, and then upper back strength because the weight of your breasts get bigger. And then post baby, when you're breastfeeding and holding the baby in front all the time, this front chest can get really tight and quite sore. So strengthening through the upper back helps as well. So
Yes,
lots of
and
things that we can
po
do.
posture, absolutely, because your boobs get a lot bigger. That tends to give you rounded shoulders if you're not mindful of it. And I do remember with my fourth pregnancy, I was 40 years of age, and by that time, I felt in the last trimester that baby was just going to drop out between my knees anytime because that was the feeling in that lower area, like the hips tend to move apart and they get wider. And so I should probably have done Pilates because especially at that age, having a baby, I needed to strengthen up. I should have. Anyway, it worked out all right in the end, but I could have done it better, I'm sure.
Well, we also do a lot of work with the pelvic floor. So, during pregnancy, those early stages of pregnancy, we still strengthen it. But during that last trimester, we definitely teach the woman, about trying to relax the pelvic and then help stretch it so that when they ready for labor, it's going to be a little bit easier. And then also they've got that knowledge post baby that they can start to strengthen their pelvic floor pretty much straight away because they can go back to some of those more gentle Pilates exercise, but just have that focus on the pelvic floor. So I think
Yes,
even just having that pelvic floor awareness, especially for each subsequent pregnancy can definitely help too.
yes, and then you won't pee when you cough accidentally.
Exactly, because that's not, that's common, but it's not
Mm.
normal, and there's so much we can do. And advertisements tell you it's normal, and just get a pad to pop in, and don't worry about it. But for our health, we do. We can really strengthen those muscles, and nobody needs to live with incontinence at all.
Yes. Wonderful. I think we'll finish on that note. It's I'm really excited. I'm going to go out and find a Pilates class near me now. Because I love the fact that any age can do it and you can tailor make it to suit your individual needs. It's really a great thing to do to keep the muscles working well. And that affects the nervous system. It affects the blood circulation. It affects how your brain works. Like we have to keep moving the right way to stay well and live a better life longer, right?
100% agree. Couldn't
So
couldn't have said it better myself.
now, how do people connect with you if they want to find out more about what you do and where you are?
Sure. So I'm in Melbourne, Australia. We were just talking about that before, fellow Aussies chatting together. So I have an in-person studio in Melbourne, which is called Mind and Movement Pilates. Or if people just want to check me out online, they can look up mindmovementhealth.com.au, and I've got online workouts and that on there. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Mind Movement Health. So check that out and follow along if you like.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me on the podcast, Sandy.
Bye-bye. I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and Magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.